N64 games. What up, Randies? My name is Stan from RandomTens, and today I finally get to show off some incredibly rare games from the first console I ever got to call my own. The Nintendo 64, or N64 for short, is one of the most memorable systems to ever enter the gaming industry, and although the colorful contraption was soundly beaten by its PlayStation rival in terms of overall sales, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who doesn't remember at least one of the amazing games that was made famous on the console. From the immaculate Ocarina of Time to fun genre definers like GoldenEye or Mario Kart 64, Nintendo's third home console has now been around for over 2 decades, and its legacy seems to grow more popular with each passing year. But have you ever wondered which games are considered the most prized among collectors, or which titles fetch the most ridiculous secondhand prices? Well, grab your wing cap and strap a bird to your back, because here are the rarest N64 games ever released. Show of hands, how many of you guys got the chance to play Bomberman 64 either back in the day or in the many years since? If I had to wager a guess, I'd imagine that at least a few of you out there could claim to have at least dabbled in that Bomberman outing. Okay, now of all of those people, how many played its sequel Bomberman 64 The Second Attack? Yeah, that's what I thought. Now, although I imagine there are a few out there who have either played or possibly even owned this early 2000s Hudson Soft release, the fact remains that due to appearing late in the N64's lifecycle and horrible reviews, this game was available in stores for a limited amount of time and then quickly replaced with more popular titles of that era. Featuring nearly identical features and gameplay as its predecessor, The Second Attack has been climbing N64 rarity charts for years now, and at this point in time sells for an impressive $400 complete in box. One thing you'll find with most of the rarer N64 games is that they can still be had for a reasonable price loose, and this sequel is no exception. But if you're able to find this one with its manual and box still in good condition, then be prepared to watch your wallet explode. Okay, so right away I feel like I should point out that once again, this isn't a list of the most expensive N64 games, but rather some of the rarer ones out there. Sadly, the way these videos are set up, I'm not able to get to every well-known collectible, but I'll try my best to highlight some of the most interesting stories and of course the exceptionally rare games. However, Ogre Battle 64 Person of Lordly Caliber certainly falls in the former camp. This popular Japanese real-time strategy game holds the distinction of actually being the first third-party N64 game released on the console, and like many pioneers, probably doesn't get enough credit for its innovations. In fact, Ogre Battle 64 was produced, like many fellow Atlas titles, in practically limited edition numbers, and due to being released in a time when Japanese media still hadn't quite caught on, it was deemed a failure right out of the gates. Today, however, this title can be yours for just under $200 complete in box, and it's admittedly one of the easier rare N64 games to play, as it can be played on the Wii's Virtual Console and found significantly cheaper in box than many of its collectible peers. But despite these lower figures, it can't be said enough that Ogre Battle 64 is an extremely rare N64 game. It just seems that even today, very few people want to give it a shot. As I mentioned in the intro to this video, the N64 was the first console I ever personally owned, and because of this and spending most of my school days at a babysitter's, I've actually had the opportunity to play many of the rarer N64 games out there, including this next entry. Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut was a bizarre updated version of the game Clay Fighter 63 1/3, and has an equally weird history surrounding it. This claymation fighting game with nonsensical humor and wacky characters was created specifically for blockbusters in North America when video rental stores reigned supreme. Because of the fact that only 20,000 copies were produced for rental purposes, it's now nearly impossible to find a complete in-box version of Sculptor's Cut. Add in the fact that Blockbuster's now just another piece of pop culture history, and it starts to make sense why this game, with its box and manual, can fetch over $2,500 in today's collector-fueled world. Personally, I remember a boy at my babysitter's who actually owned this game, and would sometimes bring it over so we could all play. Although, like almost every other kid, I imagine he sadly didn't keep the box. I'm going to take a chance here and guess that probably at least one half of those who are watching this video have played the final game in our showcase. Despite not being as good as the original, this sequel still has aesthetics and music that made kids everywhere smile, and many of these assets can still be found today in games such as the Super Smash Bros. Series. So what could this coveted and legendary game actually be? Well, judging by the song, you probably already know the answer. Yes, Yoshi's Story, surprisingly enough, is the rarest N64 game ever released. However, before you race over to your old pile of games, there's a catch. In order for it to be rare, you must be one of the lucky few who purchased the Yoshi's Story International version demo cartridges made for retail kiosks in North America back in early 1998. Despite being almost identical, there are a few obvious ways to spot the difference. In the international version, all in-game text is in Japanese, despite the title only being compatible with North American N64s. Even more obvious is the specially marked sticker on the cartridge itself, which clearly states "not for resale" and "international version" on the front. Now, it's never been confirmed how many of these games were actually produced, but the consensus is that it was likely anywhere from 1 to 10,000, with some claiming even less. Because it never had a box or manual, you can only pick up a copy loose today, but even still, Yoshi's Story International version will run you a cool $900 US, which seems like a lot until you remember that this game is the crown jewel of every North American N64 collector. And of course, all of this makes the international version demo of Yoshi's Story the rarest N64 game of all time. Well, that's all the time we have for today's episode, but if you didn't see the game you were expecting here, don't fret, there's always a chance I'll make a sequel with even more N64 collectibles. Until then, why not check out more episodes of The Rarest, including a specific one on the rarest N64 consoles. Let me know what your favorite N64 game was in the comments section below, and as I always say, happy hunting, baby rhinos.